March 2020. The stock market drops 34% in 33 days. Trillions of dollars vanish. Retirement accounts cut in half. Financial plans destroyed. And on day 34, a man calls his financial advisor in a panic. "Sell everything," he says. "I can't take this anymore. Get me out." His advisor asks, "Why did you invest in the stock market in the first place?" The man says, "To grow my retirement fund." The advisor says, "And has anything changed about that goal?" "No," the man says, "but I'm losing money." The advisor responds, "You're not losing money, you're paying the fee." The man is confused. "What fee? I don't pay you a fee." "Not a fee to me," the advisor says, "a fee to the market. The volatility is your admission price, and you're trying to leave the theater before the movie ends."
That conversation is based on a real call, and it illustrates the single most misunderstood concept about investing that Morgan Housel exposes in Psychology of Money. Most people treat market drops as punishment for a mistake they made. They think they did something wrong. They want to fix it by getting out. But market volatility is not punishment. It's the cost of admission. And if you don't understand that difference, you will never build wealth. I'm going to show you exactly why this reframe changes everything, why people who understand this concept get rich, and why people who don't understand it stay broke. This is the truth about money that authors hide. Before we begin, this video is for educational and entertainment purposes only. I'm reviewing a book and discussing investment psychology. This is not financial advice. Always consult a qualified financial professional before making any investment decisions. Now let me tell you what makes this channel different. Most book review channels summarize. They tell you the main ideas. They recap the chapters. They give you the key takeaways. We don't do that here. We expose what authors don't say explicitly. The psychological frameworks buried in the examples. The uncomfortable truths they hint at, but don't emphasize. The patterns they expect you to discover on your own. If that sounds interesting, subscribe to What Authors Hide. Because today, we're deconstructing one of the most important investment concepts ever written. And we're starting with a question Morgan Housel poses but never fully answers. If market returns are free, why doesn't everyone take them? The answer is simple and devastating. Because the returns aren't free, they have a price, and most people refuse to pay it. Morgan Housel opens this concept with a simple observation. You pay $80 to get into Disneyland. You wait in line for an hour to ride Space Mountain. Nobody complains about the line. Nobody demands a refund because they had to wait. You knew the wait was part of the deal. You accepted it. You paid the admission fee. The line is not a punishment. It's the expected cost of the experience. Now apply that to investing. The stock market has returned roughly 10% annually over the last century. That's an extraordinary return, one of the best wealth-building tools in human history. But it doesn't give you 10% smoothly. It gives it to you with violent swings. Drops of 20%, 30%, sometimes 50%. Those drops are not defects. They're not signs that something is broken. They're not punishment for investing badly. They're the admission fee. The volatility is the price you pay for the long-term returns. And if you're not willing to pay that price, you don't get the returns. But here's what Housel reveals that most investment books completely ignore. Most people intellectually understand this. They nod along when they hear it. They agree in principle. But when the market actually drops 30%, they panic. They sell. They get out. Because intellectual understanding and emotional acceptance are not the same thing. You can know volatility is normal and still feel like you're being punished when it happens. That feeling is what destroys portfolios. And this is where Housel exposes something most people never consider. The feeling of losing money is not proportional to the amount you lose. It's exponential. Losing 5% feels bad. Losing 10% feels twice as bad. But losing 20% doesn't feel twice as bad as 10%. it feels 10 times worse. Because loss aversion is not rational, it's emotional. And emotions don't scale linearly. So when the market drops 20%, your brain screams, "This is a catastrophe. You're losing everything. Get out now." Even though rationally, you know a 20% drop is normal, expected, part of the deal. Your rational brain and your emotional brain are in a war, and your emotional brain usually wins. This is why most people fail at investing. Not because they pick bad stocks, not because they don't understand the math, because they refuse to pay the admission fee when the bill arrives. Now let me show you why the distinction between fine and fee is so critical. A fine is punishment for doing something wrong. You ran a red light. You broke the rules. You pay a fine. The fine is avoidable. If you follow the rules, you don't pay it. And if you do pay it, you feel stupid. You made a mistake. You should have known better. A fee is the cost of entry. You want to use the service. You pay the fee. It's expected, unavoidable, part of the transaction. The fee is not punishment. It's not evidence that you did something wrong. It's just the price of access. Most people treat market volatility like a fine. When the market drops, they think, "I shouldn't have invested. This was a mistake. I need to fix this by getting out." They feel punished. They feel stupid. They want to avoid paying the fine again. So they sell. They pull their money out. They sit in cash. They wait for the market to feel safe again. And by the time the market feels safe, it has already recovered. They missed the rebound. They locked in their losses. They tried to avoid paying the fine, and that decision cost them everything. But what if they had treated volatility like a fee instead? A fee is expected. When Disneyland charges you $80, you don't think, "This is punishment for wanting to visit Disneyland. I should leave and never come back." You think, "This is what it costs. I'm willing to pay it to get the experience." The same mental framework applies to investing. Market volatility is what it costs to access long-term market returns. You're not being punished. You're paying for entry. And if you're willing to pay that fee, you get the returns. If you refuse to pay it, you get nothing. Housel writes this explicitly. Market returns are never free. They demand you pay a price like any other product. The price of long-term returns is volatility and uncertainty and doubt. And like any other product, the fee is worth paying if you want the returns. Read that again. The fee is worth paying if you want the returns. But most people don't see it as a fee. They see it as evidence that they made a mistake, and that misinterpretation destroys wealth. Now here's where this gets psychologically difficult. The admission fee is not paid up front. It's paid randomly, unpredictably, sometimes years apart. Imagine if Disneyland worked like this. You walk in for free, you ride the rides, you have a great day. Then randomly, on your way out, they charge you $300. Next time you visit, you walk in free again, ride the rides, great day. On your way out, they charge you nothing. Third visit, free again. Then on your fourth visit, they charge you $500 on the way out. You'd hate that system, because you never know when the bill is coming or how much it will be. You can't plan for it. You can't prepare. That's exactly how market volatility works. You invest for 3 years. The market goes up steadily. You feel smart. You're making money. Everything is working. Then in year 4, the market drops 30% in 6 weeks. The bill arrives, all at once, violently. You weren't emotionally prepared for it. You didn't budget for it. It feels like you're being attacked, so you sell. You refuse to pay the bill. But here's what Morgan Housel reveals that changes this entire framework. The bill is not optional. You're going to pay it eventually. The only question is whether you pay it and stay invested, or whether you pay it and leave. Most people pay it and leave. They take the loss. Then they sit in cash. Then they miss the recovery. They paid the admission fee. Then they left the theater before the movie ended. That's the most expensive financial mistake you can make, because the fee is unavoidable. But the returns are only available if you stay. Let me make this concrete with real numbers. From 1980 to 2020, the S&P 500 returned roughly 10% annually. $100,000 invested in 1980 grew to over $3 million by 2020. But during that 40-year period, the market dropped more than 20% 8 different times. 8 admission fees. 8 moments where your brain screamed at you to get out. If you paid those fees and stayed invested, you got the $3 million. If you paid even one of those fees and left, you got almost nothing. Because the returns don't come from being in the market during the calm times. They come from staying in the market through the volatile times. The volatility is where the returns are generated, not despite the volatility, because of it. And this is the pattern Housel exposes throughout the entire book. The returns are compensation for enduring the uncertainty. If there was no uncertainty, there would be no excess returns. Everyone would invest. The opportunity would disappear. The volatility is not a bug. It's the feature that keeps most people out. And that's exactly why it works for the people who stay. Now let me show you the hidden cost that nobody talks about. When you refuse to pay the volatility fee, you don't just miss the returns. You pay a behavioral penalty on top of it. Here's how it works. The market drops 30%. You panic. You sell everything. You move to cash. Now you're sitting in cash. The market is volatile. You're waiting for it to calm down before you reinvest. But the market doesn't signal when it's safe. It doesn't send you an email saying, "Okay, the volatility is over. You can come back now." The market just starts going up, quietly, without warning, and you're still sitting in cash, because it still feels uncertain. It still feels risky. You want more confirmation. By the time you feel confident enough to reinvest, the market has already recovered most of the drop. You missed the rebound. You bought back in at higher prices than where you sold. You panic sold at the bottom. You cautiously bought back at the top. You paid the volatility fee. Then you paid a behavioral penalty for trying to avoid it. Morgan Housel calls this the devil's bargain of market timing. You think you're being smart by getting out during the drop. You think you're avoiding the pain, but you're not avoiding pain. You're just choosing a different kind of pain. The pain of missing the recovery. The pain of buying back in higher. The pain of realizing you made it worse by trying to be clever. And that pain is worse than the original volatility, because it's self-inflicted. Housel doesn't explicitly call it a behavioral penalty, but that's what it is. And it's devastating. Because the market doesn't care about your feelings. It doesn't wait for you to feel comfortable. It rewards the people who stayed. And it punishes the people who left. Not because it's trying to punish you, because the returns only exist for the people who endure the uncertainty. If you leave during uncertainty, you don't get the returns. It's that simple. And this is where the admission fee metaphor becomes critical. If you see volatility as a fee, you pay it and stay in your seat. You endure the discomfort. You wait for the movie to finish. If you see volatility as a fine, you pay it and leave. You try to get your money back. You miss the ending. The difference between those two mental frameworks determines your financial future. Now, here's the psychological trap that catches almost everyone. Humans hate feeling out of control. We want to do something, fix something, take action. When the market drops, sitting still feels passive. It feels like you're accepting the loss. Like you're doing nothing while your money disappears. So you take action, you sell, you move to cash, you rebalance, you change your strategy. You're doing something. You feel like you're in control, but you're not in control. You're creating the illusion of control. And that illusion costs you everything. Because here's what Morgan Housel reveals that most investors never grasp. The best investment decision is almost always to do nothing. Not sometimes. Almost always. Study after study shows that the investors who check their portfolios least frequently have the highest returns. The people who trade the most have the lowest returns. Because the people who check frequently see the volatility. They feel the pain. They take action to relieve the pain. And that action destroys their returns. The people who check infrequently don't see most of the volatility. They don't feel the pain as intensely. They don't take action. And their inaction creates wealth. This is counterintuitive. It feels wrong. It feels irresponsible. How can doing nothing be the best strategy? Because investment returns don't come from being smart or active. They come from being patient and inactive. The market rewards patience. It punishes activity. But patience feels like doing nothing. And doing nothing feels like failure. So people act, they trade, they optimize, they chase returns, and they pay the behavioral penalty. Housel writes, "The single greatest edge an investor can have is a long-time horizon. But it's also the hardest edge to maintain, because it requires doing nothing while everyone around you is doing something." Doing nothing while everyone around you is doing something. That's the real admission fee, not the volatility itself, the psychological discomfort of staying still while chaos happens around you. Most people can't pay that fee, so they act, they sell, they leave, and they never get the returns. Now let me show you why paying the admission fee is worth it. Morgan Housel dedicates an entire chapter to compounding, but he buries the most important insight. Compounding doesn't work because of high returns. It works because of time. You don't need to beat the market. You just need to stay in the market. Warren Buffett is worth over $100 billion. But here's the number that matters. $84 billion of that came after his 65th birthday. Not because he got better at investing after 65, because he stayed invested for decades. Compounding is not linear. It's exponential. And exponential growth happens at the end, not the beginning. But you only get to the end if you survive the middle. And the middle is where all the volatility happens, where all the admission fees are charged, where most people leave. If Buffett had sold during the 1987 crash, or the 2000 dot-com crash, or the 2008 financial crisis, he wouldn't be worth $100 billion. He paid every admission fee. He endured every drop. He stayed in his seat, and the compounding rewarded him for it. This is the secret nobody tells you about long-term investing. The returns don't come from picking the right stocks. They come from not leaving when everything feels wrong. You're not trying to be smart. You're trying to not be stupid. And not being stupid means, when the market drops, you do nothing. You pay the fee. You stay invested. That's it. That's the whole strategy. But it's psychologically brutal, because your brain is screaming at you to do something, fix something, protect yourself. And the winning move is to ignore your brain, trust the process, stay still. Most people can't do that, so they never get the compounding. They jump in and out. They try to time the market. They avoid the fees, and they never build wealth. Housel doesn't say this explicitly, but it's there in every story, every example, every data point. The people who get rich from investing are not the smartest. They're the most patient, the most willing to endure discomfort, the most capable of doing nothing while everyone else panics. That's the admission fee, and it's worth paying. So here's the reframe that Morgan Housel gives you in Psychology of Money. Stop thinking about market drops as losses. Start thinking about them as the price you pay for future gains. When the market drops 20%, you didn't lose 20%. You paid a 20% fee to access the next cycle of returns. That fee is annoying. It's uncomfortable. It feels terrible. But it's not punishment. It's not evidence that you did something wrong. It's just the cost of admission. And if you're willing to pay it, you get to stay in the theater. You get to see the rest of the movie. You get the compounding. You get the returns. If you refuse to pay it, you leave. You miss the ending. You get nothing. Most people refuse to pay because they see it as a fine, not a fee. They think, I shouldn't have to experience this. This is wrong. I'm getting out. And that thought destroys their financial future. The people who get wealthy from investing think, this is the price. I expected this. I'm staying. That thought creates generational wealth. Same market, same volatility, different mental framework. And the mental framework is everything. Psychology of Money is not a book about picking stocks or beating the market. It's a book about understanding the psychological price of investing and deciding if you're willing to pay it. The admission fee is volatility, uncertainty, watching your account drop 30% and doing nothing. That's the price. And it's non-negotiable. You can pay it and get the returns, or refuse to pay it and get nothing. Most people refuse, because they see volatility as punishment, as evidence of a mistake. But volatility is not punishment. It's the fee, and the fee is worth paying. If you take one thing from this video, take this. Market drops are not fines, they're fees. And reframing that difference will determine whether you build wealth or stay broke. The investors who get rich are not smarter. They're just willing to pay the price everyone else refuses to pay. And that willingness makes all the difference. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever sold during a market drop? Did you pay the admission fee and leave the theater? Or did you stay invested and regret it later? Leave a comment. Tell me your story. I read every single one. If you're not subscribed to What Authors Hide, subscribe now. Every week we expose the psychological truths that authors bury in their books, the frameworks they hint at but don't make explicit, the uncomfortable realities publishers don't want to emphasize. Next week we're covering Atomic Habits by James Clear, and the angle is this: habits don't fail because you lack discipline. They fail because you're solving the wrong problem. If today's video changed how you see investing, that one will change how you see behavior change. I'll see you there.